presents to you Honest Talk.
A columnist, author, blogger, interior architect, and a prolific designer, Nisha Jamwal is the quintessential aesthete who has expressed her creativity in multiple forms without conforming to any pre-formatted rules. The owner of Nisha Jamwal Design, Nisha is an opinion maker and influencer, often seen in news debates and known through her columns in newspapers. Nisha has also written books on saving India's dying craft. Nisha has been a consultant to many luxury brands. She has designed the Jaipur Airport Lounge and interiors of restaurants, dentist clinics, Warship, INS Delhi, and Bollywood homes. But Nisha has not limited her talent and focus to the world of luxury. She works with traditional Indian craftsmen to save our dying Indian crafts. She has also curated and conducted auctions for promoting the cause of adoption. She has roped in celebrities to help her cause. Her exuberance in the face of severe personal challenges caught the eye of author Lord Jeffrey Archer, who chronicled her real story in his tale Cast Off in the book And Thereby Hangs a Tale. In the story, Nisha is the protagonist, called by her real name, Nisha Jamwal. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for Nisha Jamwal.
So first of all, ma'am, thank you so much for joining and agreeing to share your thoughts with us. We are extremely very happy to have you for today's talk.
It's a pleasure, Mr. Harsh, and I'm looking forward to this very edgy subject that we picked for Honest Talk with Nisha Jamwal. I'm delighted to be here and reach out to all the people who've actually been wanting to hear from me on this topic.
It's our pleasure, ma'am. Thank you so much for joining. Ma'am, before we jump to the topic of today's session, ma'am, it's my request, and also I think it will be, ma'am, many of our viewers see you as their role model. So, ma'am, it's a little request from my side, ma'am. Please tell us, because you have achieved so much, so many things, and won so many awards. So, ma'am, it's a request. Please tell us little about your journey and how this all energy come to you. Also, please tell us little about it so we can start this session with same high energy.
Thank you. That's very kind of you. I appreciate your acknowledgement and your inspiring words. How did the journey commence? I've always been a person, Mr. Harsh, who's been excited by creativity, colors, shapes, forms. So design was a part of my natural genetic structure. I've seen my parents always appreciate art, music, go for cultural programs, go for musical programs and plays and film. Any form of art has attracted my family. An outing always meant an art gallery or a museum. So creativity came naturally to me, and it stands to reason that creativity had to, spread over my professions. So, being an interiors architect, a writer, an author, a person who's interested in film, writing about people, also with brands, is something that came fairly naturally to me in my life. I'm also very excited by, international events, talking about them, and that translated into my tryst or my romance with television and cinema. Where does the energy come from? I think the energy, Mr. Harsh, comes from the desire to do everything and put my finger in every single pie. I'm a jack of all trades, I think, and a master of a few of them. Life has been very exciting, and I'm, only looking to do more things. It was Lord Jeffrey Archer, the author, who told me that there's very little time to do all that we want in our lives. And I think that's where my immense fervor to complete all my dreams comes from. My next project should be writing my own life story in the form of memoirs, which is inspirational memoirs to inspire other women who have roadblocks and rapids to take them as learning experiences, because I honestly feel, Mr. Harsh, that all challenge and all hardship comes as teachers to us to up our game, to become stronger, to become more resilient. And when my friends mollycoddle their children, I always tell them, one of the few teachers I had in my life was my hardship. So hardship is one of the best teachers. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes, ma'am.
So that was actually what inspired my journey. Very creative parents, a lot of challenge, a lot of excitement, and my love for art, shape, form, color, design.
All right, ma'am. It's really a wonderful listen from your own voice. So, ma'am, moving to the topic of today's session, which we have chosen is how the Black Lives Matter movement is impacting India's ambition with light skin. So, ma'am, I would like to raise here a question. So, ma'am, I would like to know your thoughts over it. Ma'am, Black Lives movement went from a hashtag to a global rallying cry. So, ma'am, what do you think over it, ma'am? How it has impacted, how it has created an impact in India and all over the world?
So, Mr. Harsh, firstly, I want to acknowledge three friends, Ishika, Tanisha, and Tarini, who inspired me to discuss this topic. And they said, how come you've not focused on something which is such an important global movement? I have to say that not only have I focused on it, but I believe in such a movement, not only about Black lives, but lives that matter. Because I believe that the ascent of an enlightened humanity is the end of prejudice in human interaction. Because prejudice, I think, in human interactions come from the basest part of the human brain. And if you look at the lives of Queen Victoria and Prince Albert, one of the game changers was the Grand Exhibition, the Great Exhibition that happened. And that was, an exhibition that was a melting pot for different countries, different cultures. The Americans came in, the Europeans came in, and they put aside their prejudices and their problems and their wars. So the point I'm making, Mr. Harsh, is for great innovation, for great invention, for technology, for science to proliferate, we need to put aside prejudices. And the epitome of prejudice, I find, is what has plagued America since it was founded, which is that there has been a great prejudice against the blacks. So they have issues in terms of progress, education, development, and one of the cornerstones of the Black movement, Black Lives Matter, is to unfund the police and use those funds to try and encourage innovation, education, development, and helping the blacks come to power with the whites in America. So I think the base part of the brain, it categorizes others as predator or prey. In the same way that you categorize fair from dark, you categorize good versus bad, you categorize intelligence versus unintelligent. So these are our own perceptions. They may not be necessarily true. And the reason it's relevant to our own country is also because there are so many prejudices in this country based on religion, based on classes, based on caste. After all, the same way that America has battled, prejudice against the blacks or the Hispanics. I've studied in a Hispanic majority. There are lots of Hispanics in California. That's where I've studied. So I've actually viewed this. So in the same way that America has these prejudices, India has prejudices against various religions. Instead of being a melting pot of different cultures, after all, we must not forget that the Mughals brought so much art, so much Petrodura inlay. The Taj Mahal, which is one of the wonders of the world, we attribute to the Mughals and the Muslim community. So from time immemorial, India has been host to the caste system, and the caste system has, I think, limited progress and growth. At one time, it did have relevance, Mr. Harsh, because we did, the caste system was formed because of a division of, your chosen field in life. But it soon became about prejudice and about differences in marriage and very many impediments in growth. So if you were to ask me, all forms of prejudice, the same prejudice that makes a white man, a white police officer, naturally assume that a black man wearing a hoodie is a criminal. In the same way, any prejudice, is only detrimental to the growth of a human being. The same prejudice that makes a lot of people feel that, hey, women are not as good at science and technology, and women cannot be, part of NASA, or women cannot go to the moon, or women cannot be pilots. That's the same prejudice. I mean, it's just a different form that it takes in the Black Lives Matter, the topic that plagues the nation, the American nation at the moment. And I can't help but say, without really wanting to sound critical of any form of government, I must say that in my personal opinion, Mr. Trump has not, encouraged equality. He hasn't come out and stood up for the movement as much as I would have wanted him to. President Obama had set in place certain reforms, and those were dismantled by President Trump, to our absolute, at least to my utter disappointment. Because for America to be, which is one of the great nations of the world, to lead, it has to give up the prejudice of the blacks. It has to encourage black education. Progress of the human race is when we give up prejudices. And human development and individual development is only impeded when we, are going to bring color and class. If you read Pride and Prejudice, what was Darcy's prejudice? It was about the class of, Elizabeth. And when he overcame that prejudice, you notice that there bloomed such a beautiful love. So that could be the metaphor of my answer to you, that when you give up prejudice, what started out as resentment and attitude and, things that impeded a relationship, actually turned out to be one of the most beautiful relationships to this day. When you think of love, you think of Darcy and Elizabeth. So to see individual development, you cannot impede it with prejudice, because you are actually impeding development of a community, of a society, of a human being, and of the entire human race. So this is what I feel about, the Black Lives Matter movement. And I'm very much pro it. It was started in 2013, if I'm not wrong. And there were a lot of people due to whom this happened. But in 2019, 1,000 people died for it to gain such momentum and become one of the most important movements in humanity. It's just created a lot of sadness and a lot of unhappiness in a lot of people. And I'm one of them. Killing black. I must quote a statistic, and this is by the PLOS One magazine, the study by PLOS One, and I'm not mispronouncing PLOS One, it is PLOS One, found that a significant bias exists in killing unarmed Black Americans versus unarmed white Americans. So that is a statistic. And if we allow prejudice to proliferate, we will limit individuals in society, we will limit aspiration, achievement, and all progress of humanity. That is my personal feeling. As you know, as I've already mentioned, in 2019, more than 1,000 Black Americans died, the largest number. And this actually created the hashtag Black Lives Matter. Some of the people that, spewed a lot of anguish and resentment among the Black people were Trayvon Martin, Eric Garner, Michael Brown, Breonna Taylor, and of course, we can't forget the main impetus, which was George Floyd, whose last words were, "I can't breathe." And that was, of course, because of the chokehold. One of the things that the Black Lives Matter movement is asking for is to give up the chokehold by the white American cop. To ban that act because that was what eventually killed George Floyd. So yes, I feel very passionately about this movement, and I think it's gained momentum all over the world, Harsh. It's not only with the Black people like us, people like a lot of white Americans who have the spirit of humankind alive in their souls, are very pro this hashtag, very pro this movement. And to conclude my little, journey going through this with you, I must say that thank you for giving me the opportunity to, discuss this matter, which I'm very impassioned about.
Ma'am, it's our pleasure. So ma'am, you made a very good point, many good points. So ma'am, one which I like the most is that not only Black Lives Matter, all lives matter. So ma'am, in same context, I would like to move my next question. Ma'am, do you think will this movement fire up the other problems which we are generally facing in India, like anti-caste system, gender inequality, and these type of problems?
I think on its own, without really borrowing from America, I think on its own, India and Indian women are speaking up against gender bias and the patriarchal system. I do believe that the patriarchal system does exist in India. I do believe that there is a lot of discrimination. For example, Mr. Harsh, look at the English versus Hindi problem. A person who doesn't speak the Queen's English is looked down upon. I don't think that should again be a prejudice, It really, if you speak to a Frenchman or a German person, they speak with a French or a German accent. So why do we look down upon an Indian who speaks with a Hindi accent or an Indian accent? I think, we are Indians, and to speak in Hindi is actually a matter of pride. So, yes, there are lots of prejudices in India in a different form. But while we don't have a black prejudice, we definitely have a dark prejudice. So, to this day, you hear people, I must tell you about a personal incident. A very close friend of mine, when she was looking for a husband, for a wife for her son, she said, "Nisha, will you help me? And please make sure that she's fair." So I was really shocked when she said that. An educated lady from a good, intelligent family, her first priority was that she gets a fair girl for her son. Not intelligent, not education, not background, but fair. So that still forms a very important part of our, prejudice in this country. Fair versus not fair. And I think that it's a huge problem. I also think, like I earlier mentioned, the Hindi versus English problem. We need to get over our colonial complexes. We need to move forward. We need to be, proud of our Indian lineage and stop being apologetic and wanting to be, avatars of the British. So we have to let go of our colonial past. Apart from that, yes, you're absolutely right. There are also, a two-tier town versus, big metro prejudices, big house versus small. I think as human beings get more educated, more exposed, they get more and more expansive and more tolerant. The word I'm looking for is tolerant. So I think the way out for all the world, all humanity to progress is to be more tolerant, more all-encompassing, and more compassionate to other human beings. Having said which, while I'm not aware of any great impact or influence, I'm definitely aware of the great following the Black Lives Matter movement has in India. For instance, with me, I feel very strongly about it as a person who studied in Los Angeles. I have personally seen this prejudice, and it saddens me that it persists until this day.
All right, ma'am. Ma'am, when I was collecting the question for this session, one question which is common in all the platform, and I think I should raise it here because you are joining us today. The question is, ma'am, what would you like to comment on, ma'am, fairness cream advertisements? And ma'am, there is a proposed ban on it also. So how will it going to affect the industry?
So I honestly feel that bans should be resorted to when societal discourse cannot bring out change. I feel that if we have societal discourse, each major prejudice like Hindi versus English, caste, religion, fair versus dark, all the things that we must fight against would naturally get resolved into acceptance and toleration. Having said which, for role models to give up advertising or endorsing fairness screens is a great idea, because when a Sushant Singh Rajput commits suicide, we see so many other celebrities and people, going that route. I think it's not a good thing. So when celebrities give up endorsing fairness screens, I think people don't have such a fetish for being fair. After all, if you look at models like Naomi Campbell, if you look at some of the most beautiful women in the world are darker skinned. India has a more golden, burnished skin tone, and I think that makes Indian women are some of the most beautiful in the world. So why covet a Caucasian skin when we are not Caucasian? We are Asians, and we are. I think Indian women are extremely beautiful, and the most beautiful women in India are of a slightly dusky complexion. I mean, the most famous example would be Lord Krishna, who was such a dark Lord. That's why he's painted as blue. Or if you look at Vishnu, he's supposed to be dark. So why not take the divine message of fairness not being an issue in beauty, not being a prerequisite for beauty. So I definitely don't know about a ban, but I know that fairness creams are obsolete. In this day and age, we don't need them, we shouldn't want them. And instead, if we could have creams which are for a glowing complexion, or for improving the texture of a complexion, why not have those kind of creams? And even to that, I would say that beauty also shouldn't be a pre-formatted and pre-digested pap that's fed to people. It should be about also the mind, the temperament, the nature of a person. And kudos to girls like Kangana Ranaut and other stars who've given up and said no to endorsing fairness creams, and despite losing a lot of money doing so.
All right, ma'am. As this conversation is getting more serious, so I would like to make it a little crunchy. So, ma'am, my next question, I was previously also thinking to ask it, but never got a chance. Today I got it. Ma'am, one of the best-selling author, Lord Jeffrey Archer, has written his book on you. Ma'am, please tell us how it has happened and means everything how.
So Jeffrey Archer, I think I could honestly say is one of the most fabulous authors I've read. The tempo, the turn of phrase, the humor, everything I have loved since I was a child. One of my first Jeffrey Archer books was Cain and Abel. But the greatest surprise was when I met the man. He's even more exciting, sparkling, witty, and humorous than his books. He's one of the most wonderful people that I know in my life, and I love him more than I love his books, nearly. I mean, even if that's possible. And Jeffrey Archer met me several years ago, and we struck an instant friendship. He's one of the most enigmatic and interesting men I've met, but what was surprising was that he chose to be a friend of mine, and I'm deeply flattered to this day that he chose me to befriend in all his acquaintances in India. The one friendship he took back with him to his country and pursued throughout his life was me. It's a great compliment, and I absolutely find his writing riveting. The fact that he chose to write my own personal story is even more, it's even more exciting to me and it's something that I'll cherish all my life. How did it come about, Mr. Harsh? I really can't say. I was, it was my birthday when he announced that he's writing my story, and he pulled out a paper from his pocket and he read, the start of the story. And we, of course, had a lot of discussion, and I added, I must tell you, I must interject by saying the story is 100% true. There is no fiction in that story. It turned out to, when he gifted me the limited edition version, that it was one of the most, special moments of my life. And let me use this opportunity of your platform to share that the book was written many years ago, nearly 5 to 6 years ago, but in May, a special version was printed of the reader's favorite stories until now in his lifetime. The stories that he's written in his lifetime, all the favorite stories until now. And interestingly, I have it right here with me, even though this was not part of the agenda. I will show you. It is an illustrated version of my story, and I hope I can find it. And this is come in the compendium of all the favorite stories of the author, and Cast Off, which is my story, is one of them. So this is my story, and this is the, you are the first platform I'm sharing this on. This is the story, and it's called Cast Off. And these are illustrations of me and my loved one, my partner. This is the true story of how we met, and I'm going to show you all the illustrations if I can. This is a hard copy limited edition book, and the paintings were to be shown in one of the foremost galleries in London. Unfortunately, that didn't happen because of the lockdown and because of the unprecedented virus. I mean, travel became impossible. But I was supposed to be in the show, in the art gallery, releasing this book on the same day that it was Jeffrey Archer's birthday in April. So this is the story, and it's all his favorite, the favorite stories written by Jeffrey Archer and picked and chosen by his readers all over the world. So it's been an honor and a privilege to be part of this compendium, this collection. And you're the first person I'm sharing this news with.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for sharing all this in our platform. It is really a great matter of pride for all of us. So, ma'am, I don't want to waste your much time. So, moving to my last question, ma'am. Also, I don't think it is much relevant to topic, but I can't. I would like to ask it here. So, the question is, ma'am, you have worked in so many fields, like you are a celebrity columnist, a writer, interior architect, equal rights activist, and brand consultant. Ma'am, what is the most that work which is the most closest to your heart?
You're most welcome to ask me any questions, Mr. Harsh, firstly. Secondly, I have to say that writing is the most pleasurable to me personally, because I do it alone and I'm not dependent on labor or on anyone else's sense of timing or sense of, industry. I'm happiest when I'm writing, and I'm also very, very happy when I am giving back to our country, to our society, to our people, all the nurture, love, and the life that I've received in this very country. So I am working with the Adivasi farmers and villagers in Orissa with Harsha Trust. Harsha Trust is a foundation that is one of the most upright, honest, and reliable NGOs in our country. It exists out of Bhubaneswar. I go there very often, and I work in places like Bisam Katak to create led and spearheaded by Mr. Kalol and some IIT professors, Mr. Kalyan Banerjee, Mr. Panda, and Mr. Bismoy Mahapatra. We work together. I'm just a very junior past person in their fold, but it gives me great pleasure to be part of change and be part of the metamorphosis of our country. The other thing very close to my heart is equal rights and ensuring and working towards making a handicap-friendly country. Helping public places get ramps, get lifts, get handicap-friendly washrooms. This has been very close to my heart. I've been working, we've even, with the eminent lawyer Abha Singh, we've taken a PIL out, and the government, I must say, is very cooperative. The Maharashtra, the BMC is working hand in hand with us to make public places handicap-friendly, give us ramps. These are some things that fire up your soul, because you're doing them without agenda. You're doing them without expecting any payback. You're actually doing it with a sense of liberation and freedom, the freedom to bring change. So that when you you will agree that COVID has also made you realize how temporal and how transient life is. So it makes you understand that you're here to do much more than just, personal aggrandizement and personal industry.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for giving your important time, and also it was one of the memorable moment will be for us. And thank you so much, ma'am, for joining. It was really a great session with you. Thank you so much, ma'am.
It's a pleasure to be here on your platform, Mr. Harsh. Thank you for raising such eminent topics, and all the best to you and all the viewers here today. Thank you and best of luck, and stay safe.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.